Hey y'all, it is I, Anthony the Canadian Guy, and welcome to Wrestlesode. Today I have a huge treat for all of you. Today we're going to be talking with one Travis Cole, and if anybody knows anything about my history with Alberta Independent Wrestling, the very first ever show I ever went to, Travis Cole was performing at that show, and he was the one that I fell in love with, and he made me really get into Alberta Independent Wrestling, and like I even say during this interview, I don't know if Wrestlesode would even exist if he wasn't at that show to really get me hooked in on the scene. So it was really exciting for me to be able to sit down and finally talk with Travis about, you know, his life in wrestling, how he got here, all the different stories, the traveling stories that he's got, being able to say, you know, he worked under Lance Storm. He's been doing this for a long time. So it was, like I said, a very, very long time coming that I've been able to sit down and chat with him. So we get to do that. Now, as a quick note, there will be no live Wrestlesode tonight over on Twitch. Because of that, we are bringing you two Wrestlesodes on the YouTubes here. This week we have today with Travis Cole, and on Wednesday we will be bringing you one T.Y. Jackson. That's why there's no additional Wrestlesode this week. I have to work evening shifts. I'm sorry about that. But a big thing I would like to bring out first is we're doing really, really good on this channel. We're doing really fantastic, and we would love to see a little bit more engagement. So if you like it, remember to hit that like button or subscribe, or even leave a comment below on who you would like to see me interview next, because it's really great to try to interact and see all of you and bring that love and passion of Canadian wrestling forward. So anyways, without further ado, let us go and talk to one Travis Cole and see what he's up to. Let's go. Great. How are you, buddy? Welcome.
Doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. As I was saying, I'm kind of marking out a little bit here today. As I've mentioned a few times, when I first came into contact with Alberta Indie Wrestling at my very first show ever, which was a CWE show, you were my standout there. And like I say, even to this day, had you not been there, who knows if Wrestlesode might even exist today, because you made me fall in love with indie wrestling. So thank you for that. And thank you for inspiring me to make like giant heads with your face on it that I take to shows whenever I know you're at a show. So thank you first up. But
thank you.
So
I think that puts a lot of pressure on this episode if I'm part of the reason why this podcast exists. So hopefully I can deliver.
I hope. Well, I don't want to put all the pressure and onus on you. I mean, obviously there's a lot of things that go into it, but like I said, at the very first ever show, you were such a standout. I loved every minute that you were there. You basically inspired me to make like great, awesome like merch. Like this isn't merch, but like imagine if this was, right? Like, I mean, this would probably sell pretty good. You've used this countless times. Every time I've been to your show, you'll walk up to me during your intro. You'll like grab your face. You'll preen your hair to it like you're looking in the mirror. It's always a great time. I love the way that you can just do that with basically anything. You're great at this kind of thing. Sorry, okay, I'm gonna stop gushing now. Stop being such a fanboy. So let's start off from the beginning here. Travis, how did you start in the world of wrestling? What made you fall in love with this? Because clearly you've obviously been doing this now for a little while. You're quite well known across the Alberta scene, even into the prairies. I mean, you travel around, so.
A little bit. So I got started in 2011. Most people know that I originally trained with Lance Storm, so I won't get too much into that. So there's probably been a million Lance Storm graduates on your podcast over the years.
There's been a few, but they've all got great stories. Let's just say it that way.
Okay, that's fair. I'll have to think of one. I got started in 2011, and I trained for 3 months, and then I started working locally. A lot of people don't know this, but I started working locally as a referee. It was just one of those things where I showed up to a show to get booked right after I graduated. They needed somebody to referee. I was always told, help out where you can, so I did. And then it turned out they needed a regular referee, so I actually, for a while, wrestled some of my first matches under a mask in a full bodysuit. And then I would ref the rest of the show. Not a lot of people know that, but my first match was actually fully hooded. I had a mask that was attached to a top and pants, like not a single inch of my skin was shown. And so I did that for about a year before, maybe a little less than a year. And eventually they started letting me wrestle as myself once they had, I guess, the referee replaced me. So it's kind of an interesting start.
I was going to say, that seems to be like quite a lot of people's like start in the world of wrestling, where you kind of start off as a ref and then you've transitioned a little bit. Did you go by Travis Cole the ref, or did you have like your own special ref name back in the day?
Oh, geez. I definitely wasn't Travis Cole because I didn't. Quick fun story on how Travis Cole started. Although the Travis Cole part's not as interesting, but as I was working under the mask and then refereeing as well, eventually we had an opportunity to do a botch show out in the middle of nowhere where nobody had seen me before. So it's like, okay, we'll give him a chance. We'll let him wrestle or whatever. So we had to come up with a name for me, and Michael Richard Blaze actually decided that I would be TJ Kidd.
Oh, geez, I wonder where the inspiration for that came
Most
from.
people that my initials are TJ, my first name, my middle name are TJ,
Okay.
and obviously Michael Richard Blaze, for those that don't know, was trained by Tyson Kidd,
Hmm.
also known as TJ Wilson. So I think it amused him that when they posted the results the next day, it would be so and so beat TJ Kidd on some random show in Alberta somewhere. So, so my first matchup was actually TJ Kidd, and then probably within the next month they put me on a show in Alberta, in Calgary or Edmonton or something like that, and Lance Storm and the promoter and I were just kind of standing around, and Lance was like, "Well, that won't do." The TJ Kidd name, and we just threw some names around, and we settled on Travis Cole.
Well, that works. And obviously, so that's been now since 2012, then 2013.
Yeah, I guess 2012 would have been the first official Travis Cole match. Yeah.
So what inspired you then to like go into the world of training? Because you said you started in 2011, but I mean, you don't just kind of walk it up to a school. I mean, unless you're Bruno Sammartino's like trainees or something, you don't just walk into someone's backyard and become a wrestler. So how did you become a wrestler? Like how'd that fall into it? How'd you fall into that?
But you know what? It's funny. I could go on that all day, but I've been a fan since I was a little kid. Like I'm dating myself here, but when we used to go to Blockbuster, we were, allowed to rent a video, and my choice was always a wrestling video. So even though I grew up in the '90s, quite often I was renting old WCW pay-per-views or old WWF pay-per-views and stuff like that from the local Blockbuster. So even though I grew up in the '90s, a lot of my wrestling education was Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Ric Flair, and my dad was a huge fan since the '70s, so he knew all the guys and all that stuff. So I mean, it was an all life thing, and I actually I don't know if I've told this before either, but I actually, when Lance launched his school in 2005, I actually emailed him, but I wasn't 18 years old then, and so he kind of put me off for a little while, and then pretty much as soon as I turned 18 years old, I moved back to Calgary. I was living in Winnipeg at the time, and signed up with Lance. The rest is kind of history.
That's really awesome, and it's really great when you can kind of like share that experience. Like you said, your dad was a big fan. So was it like you and your dad, like Sunday night pay-per-views or something, like 5 o'clock roll around, everybody just jumping into the living room, all like super hyped? Was that like your childhood? Do you remember those kind of days?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny too. It's a funny story he brings up kind of often, but like I remember we actually went to see WrestleMania 17 in the theaters because up here in Canada, they've only recently started doing it. Americans have no idea about this.
It's so great, by the way. I love
Because I
it.
heard recently that AEW has been doing the theaters down there, but and the reaction was like, oh, that's a thing, and it's like that was a thing when I was a kid here in Canada, and we actually went to WrestleMania 17. And it was like 20 something degrees and sunny out when we went. And when we left, it was like a full on blizzard. And I would have been 9, 10 years old at the time. So I'm just chatting my dad's ear off. And he's like white knuckling it. But like, I just saw WrestleMania in the theater. So I just want to keep talking about it. And he always brings that up. Like, he was so like, all right, I get you're excited, but I don't want to kill us. So there's kind of that fun aspect. So that's one of those fun stories. And then same thing too, like we would always go to my uncle's house, my cousins, and watch pay-per-views and stuff like that when I was a kid. And I just remember being like 6 inches from the TV.
And just being glued to it. So it's like from a very young age. Do you remember that being a part of your life, or was it like, I don't know, you were like 7 or 8 or something, and suddenly like Ric Flair comes and struts his way down the, like you're like, oh, what's this? Like, what was it?
I don't have a specific date, but I think it was probably even earlier than that because I remember watching uh, some of the Brett and Owen feud as a kid, and I would have only been about 4 years old then.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
So
it's
it's
yeah,
been.
it's
Was
it's
there
like
anybody specific that like you, your dad, your uncle, like did you guys have like favorites growing up? Like, or did
well, I watched more WWF growing up just because that seemed to be what was available, and then as I went to elementary school, that was a popular thing. Everybody loved DX and stuff like that. Because I think like the younger kids were more like, oh, cool, suck it, and all that stuff. Whereas like maybe the teenagers and the adults were like, oh, too sweet, NWO. So I think I think I think I watched a bit more WWF, whereas my dad was more of a WCW guy. He was big on the Four Horsemen, and that was his big thing in the '80s. He loved those guys. So for me, my favorites, probably my favorite growing up was Owen Hart, actually, which is
great choice.
not. It sounds weird to say that's kind of weird, but it's like for whatever reason, I identified with him, even though I was the older brother. That's why it's kind of weird to me. Like when I think about it, it's like I was identified with Owen. I'm like, why is that? Because I am the older brother, but for whatever reason, yeah, just Owen spoke to me a lot as a kid. And then as I got a little bit older, I actually really got into Triple H. That was appointment television for me. It was like 1999, 2000, 2001, every Monday night. I was old enough that I could watch the whole show. I didn't have to like tape it. At that point, when I was younger, 97, 98, I'd have to watch part of it the next day because it was past my bedtime.
Right, of course.
But yeah, so I think Owen was probably the first that I can really remember. And then when I would watch my old stuff, I loved Macho Man.
I mean, you just named the greats of the greats right there. It's hard not to love wrestling
It
when you've
seems
got
kind
these
of
people.
weird when you put it like that. It seems so silly. Like, oh yeah, obviously you like those guys. They were awesome.
Oh, for sure. Well, I know my first introduction to wrestling was like I always say this when I watched wrestling for the first time or became aware of it was when I watched Kane rip off the door at Hell in a Cell in Bad Blood '97. But my
Yeah.
first introduction to wrestling was through the WrestleMania games, and it took me a while to realize that like, hey, these are like this is a real thing. Wrestling is like an actual thing that people do. And then when I watched Kane rip off the door, just immediately I was just like, okay, this is definitely gonna be a part of my life now because I just watched the coolest thing in the world. But like, was there a moment specifically that you remember where you're like, that's it, I have to be a wrestler? Like this is happening.
I've thought about that before because I don't think I have one, and I kind of think that's weird. But I think it's because I think I'm lagging on the video there. Oh, there we go. We're back. I think it's because, like we talked about, like I've been watching it since I was 4 years old. So I don't think there was ever that one moment. It's just always been a part of my life. I never really took a break. It was never like, I'm not really interested in that or whatever. Like, even when I'm a teenager and I'm going out on weekends with my friends and stuff like that, like I'm still DVRing it. I'm still recording it. I'm still watching it every week. If I miss a show, I'm reading the results. So it's like it never really left my life. So I don't think I ever specifically had that one moment where it's like, I got to do this. Because, like I said, I emailed Lance when I was like 14 years old, 15 years old to try to train with him. And so I don't think I had that like one moment. No.
That's pretty great though. So you just always knew it was going to be a part of your life. Like it was just ingrained in you even from a young age. It's like I'm destined, it's happening. I'm just going to be a wrestler one of these days.
Yeah, I think it will. I don't think I ever made the active decision other than when I moved to Calgary. I graduated high school when I was 17, so I wasn't able to wrestle. So I got a job, insurance for about 9 months, and basically saved every single cent so that I would have enough to pay for wrestling school and also be able to like attend without having to work a night job or something like that. My ideal was to be able to go to the school at 7 a.m., train until early afternoon, and then go to the gym and just completely immerse myself in it. So yeah, other than like actively going like, okay, this is the course I'm signing up for now. Yeah, I think it's always kind of been in the back of my head.
Do you think, like, was there ever something that you had as like a fallback? You're like, okay, well, if I'm not going to be a wrestler, like, I'm totally going to, train in being a chef or something. Like, I mean, did you ever have like something that you wanted to fall back on, or that you always thought would be a fun something else other than wrestling?
Not necessarily, although your wording on the end of the question, maybe like something else, but not necessarily something in lieu of. That
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Not necessarily in lieu of, but like,
Yeah, like there was never like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I'm gonna go be this or be that. But like there was like a, hey, I'm interested in fitness, so and I need to make some money for starting out. So I'm gonna work as a personal trainer or whatever and take classes for that and stuff like that. And and obviously I've done a lot of, I guess not obviously, I haven't talked about it too much before publicly, but I've done a lot of behind the scenes work in wrestling too, whether that's um, selling shows, selling sponsors, stuff like that. Like that was a big way that I helped supplement my income as a wrestler when I first relocated and tried to like be a full time wrestler. So I've always kind of like had like backup stuff, like, oh, I'm going to learn this aspect of wrestling, or I'm going to learn this aspect of that, or whatever. I'm going to learn, uh, you know, how to better market this or that. But it all kind of tied back to wrestling, no matter how I tried it.
oh, of course. So it's one of those things where it's like almost impossible to get out of your life. It's like, it's even when you try to like close the door, like the window opens up and it's still there, and it's like, hey, I'm still here. You can't get rid of me. So you
Yeah,
said,
I mean, if anything, like maybe during the pandemic, there's always those thoughts of like, maybe I should have a backup plan. Maybe I should take an extra course or something like that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and that's something that I probably will pursue just to have at some point. But it took probably that to get me to really think like, maybe I should have some sort of backup plan. It doesn't mean that doesn't mean I'm giving up or quitting or packing up my gear or whatever, but just in case, you never know. So that kind of made it a little bit more of a reality, I guess.
oh, for sure. Well, during the pandemic, did you get any one of those like weird pandemic hobbies that people seem to pick up? Like, did you like overwater succulents, or did you learn to bake bread or anything like that? What was your pandemic hobby?
It's funny you say that because at first I did exactly what I was saying, the super extra, like, okay, well, I'm gonna learn these things that are gonna help me if I can't wrestle. So I started to teach myself Japanese.
Okay, all right.
and, and I started to learn how to like edit stuff with Photoshop and stuff like that. Like all skills that are beneficial and helpful for a wrestler. But I just me being super keener, it's like, well, if I'm gonna be stuck at home, I'm gonna learn Japanese, or I'm gonna learn how to edit my own promo pictures or whatever. So I got super super extra about it at first, and then probably by the second year, I started to get like a little bit more normal hobbies. Like I got a pool table for the garage, so like I'll go out there and shoot pool and stuff in the summer, and throw on the WWE Network or whatever, and watch wrestling and hang out. And I got a little bit into like gardening and stuff like that, like really really minor stuff. But like, so my hobbies got a little bit normal towards the end of the pandemic. But yeah, at first it was like, oh, if I can't work, I got to go learn how to do this other stuff.
I like how your first thought was, okay, I need to do something else. Let's learn Japanese. Like,
And I had books, I had tapes, the whole nine.
were you putting them on while you were like asleep and stuff too, just trying to get that extra absorption of like Japanese in there?
No, I didn't quite go that far, but it's a good idea.
Did you?
I did. Now I'm making myself sound like a super dork, but I did make flashcards for myself, though.
They're a great tool. I don't know why people would diss flashcards. They're really good at helping you memorize things. It's like super great.
Especially Japanese, because then I can learn how to actually write too, like, which is super 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 hard. But like learning how to do the actual kanji and stuff like that. Like, so it's like you're kind of double learning by making the flashcards.
Oh, for sure. Well, that's they always say the best way to learn something is to teach it, and I think that's honestly like a great saying, because when you can teach something, then it's really easy for you to kind of absorb it. But other than just like flashcards and like listening to tapes and stuff, were you doing like Duolingo or anything like that? Like, what were your programs were you using to help trying to get you learning some Japanese? Because learning another language is not an easy task.
No, I did have a friend who we actually were planning on going to Japan in 2020 before the pandemic happened. We were planning to go over to Japan and everything. So we were kind of already like pre-pandemic, like practicing stuff in the car on road trips and stuff like that. Um, so it was kind of an idea in my head already. So I got a little bit of practice, like practicing off friends and stuff like that. But obviously, with the pandemic, you can't do a lot of that stuff in person. So, but I had like 6 different apps on my phone, so I can listen to other people speaking and different things like that. And I started trying to watch, Japanese media and stuff like that, just with subtitles, just so I can kind of get a feel for it and stuff like that. So, yeah, I tried a few different things.
That's awesome. I always like hearing what people kind of did like during the pandemic because people found themselves with quite a bit of time. So some people
Yeah.
came out with some pretty interesting skills. Like I got better at making bread, and at the end
See,
of the day, that was pretty much all that I really walked away from it. But that's
if I
something.
got better at making bread, I would be like 300 pounds right now. So good for you for having the willpower to be able to do that.
I thankfully have only put on like 20 or 30. So I mean, it's not so bad. Now, you've been like wrestling since you said now since 2011, and there's been different iterations. Travis Cole didn't come around really till like 2012, but like even within being Travis Cole, like there was the Travis Cole, there was Tasty Travis Cole. How did you come up with all these different personas, and how did it really shape the way you became a wrestler? Because like I'm super interested to figure out how like Tasty actually came about, because you were Tasty when I first met you.
Right.
So
Okay. So, first of all, obviously, Travis Cole, when I first started, was just boring and generic. I had a maple leaf on my ass.
very Lance Storm
Like,
inspired year.
but you know what? I'm a big believer now, too, that, your first couple of years in, like, it's better to just get the fundamentals and stuff like that. Like, I'm a big believer in, like, I really like what they do in Japan with the young lions and stuff like that. Um, I'm not sure if it's necessarily realistic to try to do that here. I'm sure some people have tried, uh, but it's kind of the Wild West here compared to, say, in Japan,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, especially independently. Um, but I'm a big believer that, yeah, focus on the fundamentals and the basics and just learning how to put together a match that's not embarrassing yourself before having some big fancy gimmick or anything. So at first I started out as kind of generic, and then I started traveling. I sent messages out to ECCW at the time and CWE in different places, and was just trying to get myself booked. And I managed to get myself booked for ECCW and for CWE in different places, and just trying to squeeze into people's cars or getting myself there because nobody else was really traveling that much at the time. And that's kind of where the hot prospect thing came from. Was it's like, okay, well, I need something, and I was a villain now, so it's like, okay, I need something that people can dig their teeth into that's not completely generic. Because, like, let's be honest, I'm a 6 foot tall white dude. Like, I'm pretty generic as it is. So like, I need something to like, I need something to latch onto here. Like, so I. I came up with the idea of the hot prospect because I was pretty much the only guy in the region that was traveling at the time and stuff like that. I was a young, kind of good-looking guy, or at least that's what people tell me. and
That's what my
and
mom
so,
says. No,
right, yeah, like you're a young, good-looking kid, like, but you need something to latch onto. So that's kind of where the hot prospect started. It started to evolve a little bit more, and I added a little bit of creation from some of the guys that I really enjoyed and stuff like that. And eventually it was like, I don't remember if someone said it to me or if it occurred to me first, but somebody basically joked, like, you can only be the hot prospect for so long. You can only be a prospect for so long. Eventually you either live up to potential or you don't. So it was like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. I've been a hot prospect for a while. I need to evolve. So at the time I was watching a lot of tape and stuff like that, and some of my favorites to watch were guys like Rick Martel and I was watching a lot of Shawn Michaels' run, like in the early '90s when he was with Sherry and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, so I started to kind of get inspired of like adding some vanity to it and coming up with a new name and stuff like that. So we're workshopping some stuff around. And then I was on tour with CWE, and this is probably just shortly before the show that you're talking about, actually, because I think this would have been in 2016.
Oh, there you go.
It might have even been the same tour.
Jeez.
But the first night of tour, I was wrestling Nick Aldis, and which I always thought was kind of a huge honor.
That's a big accolade for sure.
Besides, like, Nick Aldis being just fantastic, like, quite often I was being booked with whatever headline talent we had coming in on the first night of the tour, because a lot of times it'll be a local talent with them. The first night of the tour was usually like in Saskatchewan, and so a lot of times it was me that got them, and I always really appreciated that challenge, because they're coming in and they don't know you, they don't know if I'm any good, they don't know if I'm terrible, like they have no idea what to expect, right? So and even on my side, I don't know what to expect either. I've never met this person before. So so he had come in, and we were the main event. So I think we were going to be wrestling probably about 30 minutes or so. And I got asked if I could go out and cut a promo just to extend our time a little bit. And I'd been workshopping some lines, and there was a line that Winnipeg Wrestler used to use, and I kind of tweaked it and made it my own. And I said something in my promo about being the tastiest piece of eye candy that they'd ever seen there in that town, and it just got over. And somebody in the crowd yelled and called me tasty or something like that after the match or whatever. And from there, that just kind of became the moniker. It was a throwaway line. I was workshopping some things. Like I said, I'd been watching some tapes. I wanted to add some flavor to what I was doing, and I threw that line out there about being the tastiest piece of eye candy that they'd ever seen in that town. And the rest is kind of history. And that's how I became tasty. And then suddenly on that tour, we were trying new things every night. Funny story, the VIP openings at 6:00. So anybody who buys a VIP ticket gets in early. They get a first shot at the front row, and they can meet and greet the wrestlers and go meet the headliner. And it's a fun time. But everyone's kind of expected to be out there milling about so that people get their money's worth. So 6:00 comes, and I'm rushing to put my gear on, and I didn't have time to put my boots on. And so I went out in my I went out there in my gear, but in my like amateur shoes, my training shoes. And I went out and signed autographs, chatted, and hung out with everybody. And I came to the back, and the promoter was sitting there, and Nick Aldis was sitting there, and they just saw me in these like colorful socks with like, my knee pads on, but short little amateur boots or whatever. And they were just like, they just kind of started giggling, and they're like, "That's perfect. You should wear that to the ring tonight." So it's like, it was little things like that where we're just workshopping different stuff every night. And it's like, oh, I kind of look kind of funny with the exposed calves and the colorful socks or whatever. So I started adding that and just playing with different ideas. And then by the time I got to Calgary, I guess it was a well-cooked act, because obviously I made a fan for life that day.
I would say so, because I believe the first time, I think that was the tour that had Silas Young on it. I think it was. I believe that was.
We had him for a few, actually, so that sounds about right.
Yeah, and it was at the Marlborough Community Center. I remember that, but so that was the first show I had ever been to. My friends were like, "You gotta come watch this," and I heard that Silas Young was going to be there. I'm like, "Oh, dude, he's the last real man. Let's go watch some Silas Young." And I remember, like, Silas was great and everything, but I remember I left the show and I was just like, "Dude, Travis was awesome!" Like, that was really what I left that night. I was just like, I got to see more of that guy. So when CWE came back again, I think the next show you were wrestling, I want to say it was Madison Miles, actually.
Oh my, yeah, yeah,
I,
that sounds about right timeline wise.
Yeah, so I believe in that, and then I was just hooked right after that. So, like, I believe that was the progress of shows specifically for me. But it's great to hear that, like, by the time it hit Calgary, because by that point it was still a relatively new thing that you were tasty at that point.
Yeah, we were literally just workshopping things every night. That's what I've always sold going on longer wrestling trips to guys for. You know, like you have an opportunity to every night workshop something different and try stuff and see what works and what doesn't. Like I always think of the old, Chris Jericho thing that he used to say, where he would go to the show and he would look in the crowd and see the signs or whatever and see what lines they would write on the signs from the week before. Um, that was how he kind of determined like what was popular and what wasn't. So if people liked something, you would see signs for it the next week. So obviously, it's not quite the same comparison when I go in different towns every week, but just being able to try something and see how the crowd reacts and go, yeah, that worked, but let's try this tomorrow night and see if that works. And then you can kind of compare and contrast.
Now, this is something that I thought was pretty interesting because, um, like you had said, like when you were working with CWE, you were kind of like the headline act. So you've worked with some big names, obviously, like people like a Nick Aldis. Like, do you have like a list of like those headliner names that like really stick out in your head? You're like, yeah, I got that match. Yeah, I got that match too. That was great.
You know what? It's weird because sometimes I almost forget. Like
Right? Well,
every once in a while, I'll be scrolling my memories or my Instagram or whatever I'm going through, and I'm like, man, I could make a list pretty long of the people that I've gotten to work with. It's really really cool, and it's not just one subset. I've been lucky enough to work with guys from the '80s and take punches from Paul Orndorff every night, or Jake Roberts. I've gotten to wrestle guys that I watched in the '90s when I probably wasn't allowed, like guys like Val Venus and Bob Holly and stuff like that. Like, these guys that had all these larger than life gimmicks that I was watching as a kid, and then I'm getting to wrestle them. Or guys who are like up and coming and everyone knows in the future, like Ring of Honor guys like Leo Rush, like before WWE, everything I got to work a series of Leo Rush, Silas Young, ACH, guys like that. I've gotten to work with Japanese talents that have been over. Someone like Kaito Kiyomiya, who's big, big, big in Noah right now. Like, so I've been really, really blessed to work with some really big wrestlers, and I think and I hope that makes me a big part of what I am today.
that's really cool. Do you think, and I mean, like, I know it's hard to put you on the spot, and there's probably a few answers to this, but when you think back on those matches, like, do you remember any one specific person where you're like, it was just way too smooth? Like, you could just think back on it and be like, that felt like the perfect match. We didn't even have to talk. We just were in each other's head, and we executed that match perfectly. Like, do you have someone like that?
uh, there's a few. When you're talking about just the smoothness and the easiness, probably Kenny Omega would be the first that comes to mind.
I mean, that's probably when he wins like best wrestler in the world so many times.
And I'm only using one of because wrestling is art and it's subjective, but he is one of the best wrestlers in the world. So it's kind of hard not to start with somebody like Kenny. Um, that match was really, really special to me too because um, I had a lot of really, really great opportunities when I was wrestling for CWE um, that we just kind of talked about and glossed and went over and stuff like that. Um, but I always felt like there was a bit of an asterisk um, because I had a really good, friendly, personal relationship with the promoter. We lived together, we traveled together a lot. So I always felt like there was kind of an asterisk, like, yeah, maybe I deserve this, but also maybe I'm getting this because I'm friends with. And I'm sure that was perceived by a lot of people, and that's fine. Everybody has an opinion. The Kenny Omega match, I'd only been working for PCW for less than a year at that point, and Kenny doesn't do very many of those. That was right between his last match at Wrestle Kingdom and the match and the Double or Nothing, or the AEW launch show. So that was the only match that he did between Tanahashi and AEW's first show. And it was really, really special to me because it felt like nobody could take that away and say that I didn't earn that match. Myself and my tag team partner, Bobby Shink, we were just a one-off tag team, and it just clicked. It was magic that night. And we became the most popular tag team probably in the region, at least. And just overnight, and within a year, it's like, we're going to have you guys wrestle Kenny Omega. And it would have been so much easier to have somebody else wrestle Kenny Omega. We were baby faces. He was a baby face. You know, there was guys there that he worked with before and that he knew that he was safe with and everything like that. But the promoter, Andrew Shellcross, basically was like, these guys are our team right now. And he vouched for us. And so that match always was extra special to me because it felt like, after years of maybe people wondering if I deserved the opportunities I got, that one felt like there was no doubt that anyone could say that I earned that.
You know what? I'm going to just put this out there because, like I said, and I'm quite biased because you're the guy who got me into independent wrestling. But even as a transition because as a person, I was originally in the crowd. I was just a face in the crowd. And then I slowly started to introduce myself back into the world of wrestling in different ways. And I just got to say that you've been one of the nicest people in regard to that, even as a fan, all the way to you worked the Southern Alberta Invitational, for instance, right? Like, just even that transition, you went from the nicest guy to the nicest guy. So I always want to say that thank you to that because, I mean, I don't know what these other perceptions are, but from my perception, you're just an awesome guy. And it's well-deserved, in my opinion, because you're always so damn entertaining. So there's my defense for you right there.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that I have a lot of really, really good supporters and stuff like that. So I think a lot of that was just, your own self-doubt in the back of your mind, and just the way the wrestling business is.
Oh yeah.
Anybody who's going to be getting an opportunity, there's going to be somebody who says they don't deserve it, and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not. It doesn't matter. I try not to wade into that stuff because, one of my goals has always been not to lose myself, and stay a nice, good person that people want to be around and whatnot. So it means a lot when you say that. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I always just like to try to be as positive as possible. I mean, if you bring only positivity around, positive things stick around. If you don't focus on negativity, the negativity just tends to disappear over time, right? Like, that's the way I like to think of it. Now, we've been going already for 37 minutes, essentially. Like, I could talk all day and ask you a million questions, but we should take a break and switch into the Q&A section because there's a million questions out there already that have been asked, and I know there are going to be some really fun ones in there, and I've got questions, and, the second half is always super fun. So we're going to switch into that here in about 2 minutes. So we're going to take a quick little break. If you'd like to grab some water or something like that, we are going to run a break.
All right. I would love that.
Go for it, please. Please do. All right. 2 minutes. We'll be right back. All right. We are running an ad. Go ahead. Do whatever you need to do. I'm just going to drink some water out of my best mom ever cup.
Thank you, good sir. Is everything looking okay on your end?
Oh, yeah. It's great. Everything looking really great.
I have the Twitch thing up on my phone beside me so I can see you, because I didn't have it up on the computer here. So
right.
It looks like I'm looking over it because
you're trying to have that conversation. I do that sometimes. Instead of talking into the camera, I'll look over at our conversation and our stream like this right now, which I find myself doing quite often instead of I should be doing this, but I totally just look over at our conversation because this is who I'm talking to. All right.
I will be right back.
Go for it. Yeah. Go for it. All right. If you want, shout. If you could throw me some... Oh, there you are. Perfect. You already did that. Look at you go, Ninja. All right. Well, I'm going to drink some water. I hope all of you are enjoying yourself here today. This is a very nice cup. I grabbed it. It's not mine. This is my girlfriend, clearly. She got the Best Mom Ever award, so if anybody was thinking, she's already won it. I'm sorry. Travis Cole is a ghost. He has disappeared. So you can check him out there too. Yeah, I'm going to ask him about his tours. That's one of the things I wanted to end with here because he's going on tour, and he's going to be wrestling a bunch here in the next couple of days. So that's probably what I'll start with. Thank you guys for everybody who's tuned in, by the way. Seeing a lot of these questions coming through, so this is great. So thank you. Dudes can be moms too, that's true. But in this specific case, I didn't win Best Mom Award. That was Amber did in that case. That's fine. Ooh. All right. I'm just reading through these questions here. Oh, great. These are going to be some good questions. These are some of the ones I was hoping they'd be asked. Hey, welcome back.
All right.
All right, perfect. So first question here, because I know it's actually super important. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit towards the end as well. But you're wrestling a whole bunch coming up here in the next couple of weeks. You want to talk a little bit about where you're wrestling? Because I know you're like wrestling like 2 different promotions, like day after day after day kind of thing.
Yeah. So I've got 4 days this week. I start tomorrow in Calgary. I'm actually quite excited for that one. It was just announced last night that I'm going to be wrestling 3 of the 4 luchadors that are up here visiting. I'm going to be teaming with Leo Cristiani from Spain against El Bandito and Elemental. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm quite excited for that. I haven't, I don't know if I've ever wrestled luchadors in Canada before, like real luchadors from Mexico. So that's going to be something different that we bring to the show. And they're here all week, so if anybody is in the Calgary area, there's 4 shows this week within 45 minutes of my front door. So you've got options. We are in Airdrie and Strathmore on Thursday and Friday.
Woo.
Yeah, you gonna be there?
I hope so. I really hope you're going to try.
Okay.
Because we got to get these faces in the crowd, show the luchadors how popular we are around Strathmore.
Right? And then on Saturday, I'm in Okotoks. So it's going to be a busy week. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think the luchadors are going to bring something different and special to the show.
And that's for Can-Am Wrestling, correct?
That's for Can-Am Wrestling. And then next week, I get to do my first shows in Red Deer and Edmonton since, I believe, September of last year. Those are for Canadian Wrestling's Elite. And yeah, I'm quite excited for those too. I've been able to wrestle a lot in Southern Alberta the last 3 months since things have picked up a little bit again, but nothing up north of Red Deer. So I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of good fans there that I've met over the years, and so it's gonna be a lot of fun. And then yeah, my next few months are filling up fast. Like May, I've already got 10 dates. June, I've got 10 dates. July, I've got 9 dates. So
jeez.
Yeah. Doing a lot with Can-Am Wrestling. I'm really enjoying getting to wrestle regularly in Alberta. There was a 4 or 5 year period there where I was living and traveling in Winnipeg, and I was in Minnesota for a little while, and I was in Austin, Texas for a little while.
Jeez.
So it's nice getting to wrestle, close to home. And then I'm filling my time with some other promotions. CWE's a main one. I just came back from a tour with them in Saskatchewan, which was a lot of fun. I haven't got to do Saskatchewan since probably September of last year as well. It feels really good to be back, having a busy schedule, and hopefully everyone can stay healthy and that can continue as long as possible, or at least until the wheels fall off.
What's going to happen one way or the other? Something's going to happen. We're either getting crowds back or we're losing them again, one way or the other.
One way or another. You know what, no matter what.
That's the Alberta way. It's one way or another. Something is going to happen.
But you know what? We're going to have a good time until that happens.
There you go. All right, here's a fun little question that was asked. Do you keep in touch with any of the other students in your training class? And if so, where are they wrestling today?
Oh, geez. Actually, no. It's weird. I had, I want to say 15 or 16 people in my class originally, and only 8 finished. And of those 8, I think only 3 of us ever wrestled a match. And of those 3, the other 2 had retired as recently as 2016.
Oh,
so
geez.
I think I'm the only one left going.
So you just get to say it's like, I was the prize of my class. Lance Storm loves me most, kind of thing.
Yeah, see, there you go. There it is. Although, fun story. The closest thing, I guess, to somebody that I've known since the beginning would be Derek Cross. He was in Lance's first ever class in September of 2005, and that was the one where I saw the class picture, and there was like 5 or 6 guys, and sent Lance the message about wanting to train with him or whatever. And then lo and behold, 5 or 6 years later, um, our first day of training, we're learning how to do lockups and basic stuff like that. And Derek just come into the school as often as possible to stay fresh and stuff like that. That's always kind of resonated with me as well. I made sure to, after I graduated, I would try to show up for as many classes as Lance would have me, just so I could stay fresh in the ring. And it's kind of not teach like you were saying before, but like if you are like immersed in either teaching or seeing other people be taught every day, I think that makes you better.
Yeah.
So even though I'm out working shows and there's certain things that you can only learn by actively performing in front of a crowd, I think going back to his classes regularly really helped me, because as I would get out more and more on the road, like my first CWE shows were TV tapings. It's like, oh, I've never done TV before, so I go there and a bunch of guys are giving me advice, and then I came back and it's like, so Lance, tell me about this. And it's like, when you first learn how to wrestle, you're just worried about doing things correctly, especially with Papa Lance, where it's like, you're lucky if you get a, okay, that was good.
I hear it is quite hard to impress the guy, because usually the best reactions you get of him is when he goes, yeah.
yeah. If you did everything perfectly fine, usually the best you can hope for is just, yeah. You know, he's not there to hold your hand or whatever. And I always joke too, but it's serious. Like the first time he ever gave me like that was, I think he said that was great or something. Like, yeah, I was smiling for the rest of the day.
Do you remember what that was? Like,
that was great.
Yeah, like, do you remember what that was? Was it like a wrist lock or like what was?
No. I think it was closer to the end. I did some sort. It was something. We were doing some kind of like longer drill, like a heat drill or something, where we're just learning how to sell or how to fight or whatever, or something like that. It was just, yeah, that was really great. And I was like, oh. All right then.
You're like, I'm going home and getting steak.
Trying to hide the smirk. But so anyway, so Derek Cross actually was probably the one. I still see him regularly to this day. Our paths cross in the ring every once in a while, but a lot of people don't know that he kind of took me under his wing when I first kind of started. He kind of looked after me and wrestled as like a stable and a tag team and stuff like that very early on. And it was in a way, it was almost like the early. There was a lot of stuff that I test ran with him that I used later when I was doing the tasty thing. So in a way, that was kind of like an early kind of look into the future. But Derek was always good to me right from the start.
That's great to hear. Like, I always love when you hear it's just like, yeah, somebody's been there pretty much since the beginning, because it seems like in Alberta wrestling, somebody's got somebody that brought them into wrestling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they're still around and they have those like lifelong friendships. So that's great to hear that that's kind of what it's like with you and Derek Cross in the world of wrestling.
Yeah.
Here's a fun question for you. What's your favorite road trip story? Because clearly you've done some pretty long road trips. Also, doesn't have to be wrestling road trip related.
Oh, no. All right, let me think. I need to find something appropriate so that nobody gets in trouble.
Yeah, because here's the thing. We know some people that you've traveled with, because I know back 2 years ago, Angelica and Sydney said that you used to ride with them, and there would be some crazy stuff that would happen in those rides and stuff. So,
oh man, that's a relatively. We had a couple of rough ones. I remember we took some shows. There's a company that was running out in Winnipeg for a little while called WrestleMax, and they had some shows bought up on the reservations up north in Manitoba, and they messaged me about coming out, and they said, hey, would you be comfortable contacting like the group that you normally travel with for PCW? Because at the time, PCW was interested in booking women, so I had contacted both Kylie Morgan and Angelica about doing that.
Right.
And because there's not a lot of women wrestlers based out of Manitoba, so they kind of deferred to me on that. And I'd been training with Kylie Morgan a little bit at the local schools, and I'd known Angelica for a few years, and I'd gone out and done some shows for Pure Power Wrestling. So the three of us, and then Sydney Steele decided, okay, we're going to get in the car together, and they were coming out regularly with me. So anyway, so we go up to do this WrestleMax show, and originally it was supposed to be, I think, 3 shows. and two of them ended up getting canceled. I believe there was a suicide or something on the reservation. And they said, look, we understand if you guys don't want to still come. That's a long drive for just one show. But we'll take care of you the best we can, obviously. And so, I mean, the option's up to you. And so we decided to make the show. And it was about a 24-hour drive there and 24 hours back. And basically drove through the worst blizzarding conditions. We couldn't see the road at times. We might have been driving off the road at times. I don't even know. At one point, we switched. I let Kylie Morgan drive, and hopefully she doesn't hear this and get too mad at me. But I had actually forgotten about this, so I'm going to throw someone else under the bus. But Sydney Steele reminded me of it the other day. Literally, like within 2 minutes of taking the wheel over, she drove us into the ditch. So, but in her defense, like that literally could have happened to anyone.
You couldn't see the ditch. It was,
anything. But so we drove all the way there. We got there a few hours before the show. The other cars were late too. There was a car coming from Minnesota with Top Flight from AEW, Dante and Darius Martin.
Wow.
And a couple other guys, I believe, too. And then there was a Winnipeg car coming. So they were kind of, the weather was really bad for them too. So we were actually the first ones there. And then anyway, long story short, we do this show and we were in the building for maybe 5 hours and then turn around and drive 24 hours back through the worst conditions ever. So basically we drove 48 hours round trip to be at a show for 3.5 hours.
That's so, just out of curiosity, does that mean that you do most of the driving then when you are on the road? Are you the driver? Are you the designated people like Travis is driving? If this is happening.
Well, on that trip we all shared because it was a lot of
fair. Yeah. It always seems like somebody gets designated though.
And you know what? You know who was actually really good on that? Angelica was really, really good. She took over the overnight shift when it was snowing and we could barely see the roads, and she was a rock star that night. I'm kind of in a weird position now where it's like I used to like giving up the driving and I'll just dick around on my phone or whatever, chat wrestling, listen to music, whatever. But, I didn't mind giving up the driving, but I started to do a lot of driving because I was the young guy on the road for a while there.
Right.
And I got used to it. And then when I transitioned to being the guy like filling the car, it's like, well, I like taking my car because I like to go to the gym when I want to go to the gym. I like to go get food when I want to get food, or the grocery store, whatever. And I think if you ask anybody that I've traveled with, that like I'm not greedy about, I'm not like, oh, I'm going to the gym like right now and screw you guys or something like that. But I like having the ability to be like, you know what, no matter what, somehow, some way, I'm going to get to the gym. I'm going to get to a grocery store and I don't have to feel bad about, like, hey guys, I know we're running late, but can we just kind of do this? So yeah, I kind of, the last few years, I've got more into driving myself. So when I actually let somebody else take their car, or had somebody else take their car when we were on tour last week, that was a bit of an adjustment for me because I'm not used to not driving anymore.
I understand personally. Like, I don't go on these long road trips with like the boys or anything like that. I've never had that, but I am the driver in almost every situation that I do something. I get quite uncomfortable now when other people drive. I'm just like, I don't know what to do with myself. This has always been my thing.
Oh man, it was. Yeah.
All right, here's a fun question for you. Are you Tony Khan's huge announcement tomorrow live on hashtag AEW Dynamite Live Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern? Are you Tony's big announcement tomorrow? Because clearly you've got connections through Top Flight to Tony now.
Yeah. No. I wanted to play along and do the nice long introduction there, but then it sounds like they kind of did it with Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Central, 7 Pacific.
Yeah, that's exactly what they got on TSN too.
Right. Oh, on TSN too. Are they sure about that? They switch it all the time.
It depends, I guess, depending what day it is or what flavor the wind is outside. They change everything, it seems. But
no, I wish I could say I was. I mean, maybe I am, but he hasn't clued me in on it yet. So.
Well, you'll get the call early tomorrow. Just make sure you're down and wherever they are tomorrow. Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah, I'll have my gear in the car with me.
That's what they always say. Just make sure you bring your gear. Always be ready, right?
Yeah.
How many people? Here's another question. How many people do you fit in your car for one of your CWE tours? Like how many? Like how many people are you cramming in there?
Riding arrangements. If it's up to me, it's not that many. But there was actually a few years ago, maybe in 2017, I actually bought a van specifically for that purpose of carrying more people in my vehicle with like a mid seat and a back seat. I never ever thought that I'd be driving a bloody van in my 20s, but here I was. But I will say it was very very handy for all the luggage and stuff like that, and also too if I was on the road and I didn't have a bunch of people, I could easily take the middle seat out. I remember that tour that you saw me wrestle Madison Miles. I was traveling with her and another female wrestler and a giant named Charlie, and he's about 6'11", and he had been designated to ride in the ring truck where there was full seats, and him being the young guy, he was like scrunched up in the middle, and
just squished giant in the center of your van.
Right? I'm like, oh, look, man, I've got some room in my car, and I can take out this middle seat here, and you'll have all the leg room in the world. You could practically lay down back here. So we became fast friends just because I think I saved his knees and his back on that road trip. So
he'll always remember that, I suppose.
So yeah, to answer the question, I've stuffed 8, 9, 10 guys into a panel van and different things like that before. But in a perfect world, like I feel like 3 is awesome. 4 if you've got a bigger vehicle, because you have to remember, like especially on longer tours, like when I was in Saskatchewan last week, it was just 2 of us that went out because we had some shows in Manitoba first, and then we were going to swing back for the Saskatchewan tour and then head back to Alberta. And we had tons and tons of room in the car, but another wrestler was joining us in the Saskatchewan part. And it's like just having the extra luggage, and he brought out a box of my new T-shirts. There's a plug in there. My brand new T-shirts.
What I don't have yet is what you're saying? So that's going to be
Yes, exactly. And there's different colors. There's tank tops. There's red. There's blue. There's pink. There's black. Everyone's always saying, why do you always get black shirts? Black's boring. So I finally got colored shirts too. So yeah.
No excuse.
But anyway, point being, just having extra luggage of somebody else in that car made it a fun game of Tetris in the dark and in the snow every day. So yeah, ideally I think 3 is
3 is the magic number.
You've got enough people to rotate the driving situation. If you've got some overflow or you want to put snacks in the seat behind you, there's room in the back seat. So I think 3 is ideal.
All right, here's a question. I don't know if it's been asked. It doesn't look like it is, but I want to throw it in there. Who's the worst person to go on a road trip with? Because lately I've learned that Tony Machete's McDonald's order is insane, and that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen on Twitter when we found out his McDonald's order. So who would you say is just the absolute worst person to go on a road trip with? Who's going to the bathroom every 5 minutes?
Oh, man, I feel bad about that.
Throw them under the bus.
It's funny, though, because it's like even the people that I think of, I don't think of them as bad partners.
No.
But they have those aspects that would make you, like, for example, last week for a few days, I was riding in a car with AJ Sanchez, and I spent half of it with the window rolled down. And I'm pretty sure the driver almost swerved into traffic a few times because he was having a hard time dealing with AJ's brand, we'll call it. So, like, there's an example of somebody where it's like, oh yeah, he's the worst, but he's also like insanely considerate. For a long time, he was a terrible, terrible snorer, and he's actually got that sorted out now. But I remember we were on a road trip for Steel Domain Wrestling in Minnesota, and we had a hotel room together. And normally there was like 3 or 4 of us when we went on those trips, but for that one it was just us, so we just had one room. And pulled out he had like a little like portable PlayStation or whatever. He's playing that at 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and basically like, yeah, I'm just gonna game until you fall asleep. That way you don't have to fall asleep listening to me anymore.
Well, that's considerate, hey?
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, like that's a perfect example of like, yeah, it could be like AJ pops mine. It's like, yeah, he can be unpleasant to travel in the car with, but he's a ton of fun and he's so much fun out at the park, the bars and karaoke and stuff. And he's very, very considerate when at least when it comes to sleep and stuff like that. So it's like there's an example of somebody who does that, or like 6 minutes stopping to go to the bathroom at every stop. We were just talking about that in the car the other day. Like Danny Duggan's really bad for that, stopping constantly. And so we were kind of joking about that last week. But I wouldn't consider him a bad road trip partner per se.
You get to make lots of stops. You're going to
some pretty sticky situations on the road before. So like, there's good parts and bads to everybody, I think.
There's got to be some good to travel with a group of wrestlers, though, because at like the end of the day, like weird shit goes down. You got a big group of like giant people. They're just like, I got your back. Let's take care of each other.
Yeah, you know what? That's really cool way to put it. Like guys have differences on the road. Trust me, it happens a lot, especially when you're on a long tour for 2, 3, 4 weeks or what have you. But when it comes down to it, you guys generally have each other's backs. There's been a couple of times where it looked like, you're at a bar or something, and somebody decides, oh, these muscular dudes coming into our bar, like we're gonna start a fight with them, and it's like the boys are always there for each other.
Oh yeah, I couldn't imagine anybody like who I've seen wrestle not stand up in a moment like that to help defend each other. You guys are all amazing people.
Yeah, like that's that's the thing. We can have differences of opinion on a million different things, but when it comes down to it, like there is that brotherhood there. Guys have each other's backs.
For sure. All right, here's a fun question for you because you said you've grown it, or you lived in Calgary and you've lived in Winnipeg. Who do you cheer for when they play each other, the Flames or the Jets?
I'm actually, if I had to, I would say the Flames.
Good choice.
Because I was born here, and the Jets didn't start playing again. I think until I was like a senior in high school. So I think I have to go with Flames, but actually, I'm a Pittsburgh Penguins fan.
Oh, a Penguins fan, hey? That's okay.
I took a lot of crap for that in school because that was right around the time that Crosby had his first season. I think he played his first season when I was in maybe like 8th grade or something. And everyone's like, oh, you're just jumping the bandwagon. I was like, no, I've been a fan for the last 7 years. Well, they've sucked, so get off my butt.
That's okay. Everybody's got a blotch on the record, so yours can be the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's fine. Mine, I love the Colorado Avalanche, so everybody's got something. So there you go.
Yeah. My joke was, it's like, no, I was a bandwagon jumper when I was a kid, and I was a Mario fan. I'm not a bandwagon jumper now.
Here's another fun question for you. Is there a specific match in your career that you're very proud of? Like, obviously, you said people wrestling like Kenny Omega is like a very important match. It was very smooth. But is there a match that you're just insanely proud of that you went into it not having the highest expectations and you just walked out going like, oh, that was amazing? Or is there something that really stands out to you? It's like, that was the match.
Wow. That's actually a really good question. Oh, man. I don't know. Like if it's one specific match, no. We kind of talked about it a little bit before. Not one specific match, but just the first time that I teamed with Bobby Shank. Definitely, I've always described that. The wording you use there, I've always kind of described it as like magic because, like I said, it was just supposed to be a one-off.
Right.
At the time, I think he was just coming off doing an angle where he was the tag team champion by himself. And he was defending them by himself.
Well, he's a really tall guy, isn't he?
Yeah. He's like 6'7", 6'8".
Yeah.
So he wasn't looking for a tag team partner per se, and I'd only been there for a couple of months. And just one night, just whatever it was, they teamed us the one night, and we clicked immediately. Like I'd known Bobby for maybe a year and a half before that because he'd only been wrestling for about that long. He was doing the shows, and I liked him a lot. But he's kind of a quiet guy when he's behind the scenes, and kept to himself, especially being a new guy. And it's really funny actually too, because before I had my first match with ECW, about 6 months before we were teaming together, I went to a PCW show. My Saturday night show got canceled, if I remember correctly, and I think it was one of the nights Kenny was in town actually having a match, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna check out the show. And I remember this came up in my memories recently, so that's why I remember it so fresh on social media. But I remember posting something on Facebook about like my biggest takeaway from the PCW show is how much I love Bobby Shink. I was like, I love this guy. He's perfect. Like, he has so much personality, whatever. But yeah, my biggest takeaway from that show was I love Bobby Shink. Bobby Shink's amazing.
That's amazing. And now you guys get to be sweet and tasty
together on with.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, here's a fine little question. Since we all know that I am a retro video game nerd, are there any games from your childhood that you have fond memories of?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was a big Super Nintendo guy. I played a lot of Super Mario Brothers. Played a lot of Mortal Kombat.
Good choice. Good choice.
Donkey Kong Country, that was a popular one. Mega Man. Love Mega Man.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm a huge Mega Man guy.
Yeah. So many of those. That was the stuff I kind of grew up with. And as I got older, when I got not too much older, but when I got my first PlayStation, obviously the wrestling games I loved, all the SmackDown games. I had No Mercy for N64 that everybody loved. And the
second best N64 wrestling game in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's funny because I actually played that Attitude one first. That was given to me as like a gift. And it's not as good at all. People don't seem to like it as much. And then I played No Mercy and I played SmackDown, and those ones were so much fun.
So a big wrestling game guy growing up.
I was, yeah. I mean, I had my other games that I liked playing too at that point. Like I played a lot of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so it wasn't all wrestling, but it's like, yeah, when I was a kid, there was a lot of like Super Nintendo and like fighting games and stuff like that. And then definitely like once I had the availability to buy a wrestling game every year with like the SmackDown and the different ones, it's like that probably took up a good portion of my gaming. But like I said, I liked stuff like the Mortal Kombat and Tony Hawk and different stuff like that. So
we're clearly very similar in age, so it's like the games you're saying. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember being a kid playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 on my N64 while listening to my Three Doors Down CD on my record player. You know what I mean? Just listen to Kryptonite over and over again while playing some freaking Tony Hawk's. Like, that's my childhood. I remember it. I understand.
Kryptonite, I like that. Although I kind of questioned it, like, Tony Hawk had a good soundtrack, man. Like,
didn't it? I go back like to this day. I'm like, man, like Superman by Goldfinger, like all these different songs that came off Tony Hawk is so good. But
oh yeah, yeah. I could probably go back and play one of those games now, just for like, oh, I should add that to the Spotify.
I have done that actually. Like I was saying, Superman by Goldfinger is on my regular playlist specifically because of Tony Hawk. So I understand.
And that's another one too. Since you just, I heard you drop. I played a lot of the James Bond games too on N64 growing up. That was a popular one.
GoldenEye, man. Oh man, did I play way too much?
Even The World Is Not Enough. That one was fun. It had a fun one-player story mode. Like that was pretty difficult. So.
I'm just putting this out there. I already claim to be the best chess player in Alberta wrestling because that's just the title that I've made up for myself. That's what I get. But I'm also going to give myself best GoldenEye player in Alberta wrestling, and I'm open challenging anybody to that. That is an open challenge.
Well, I still have my original N64 and my original GoldenEye.
I as well. So this should be quite... This would be fun. I have 3 N64s. I'm a collector, though. So, but there you guys go. First challenge. Me versus Travis Cole in GoldenEye. This is going to happen one of these days.
I think maybe we need to set up a Southern Invitational GoldenEye tournament.
Oh, man. Oh, I am so down for something like that. People write this down. Anyways, let's move on to the last question here because I've been keeping you for so long. This one's a great one. Your thoughts on the all-time classic Ready to Rumble featuring Sting?
Oh, man. I used to watch that movie at like 11 o'clock at night on TBS all the time when I should have been in bed getting ready for school the next day. Like I had the little 13-inch TV in my room, and I used to watch Ready to Rumble all the time. I thought it was awesome.
It's so good. I wasn't a WCW kid either, but that like changed me because it was such a good movie.
Yeah, you know what? And like I did become one like later on, definitely for sure. Um, but if you remember, like they used to up here in Canada, Nitro and Raw were on the same channel,
Yeah.
and so they air Raw first and then Nitro. If I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
right.
right?
That sounds right to me.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of times I would watch the first hour and a half of Raw, and then I would like get sent off to bed, and then I would sit down, and we had like this ledge, and I would kind of peek over, and I would watch wrestling. My dad would be watching it, and he knew I was there. My mother didn't. She'd be in the kitchen or whatever, doing her thing or whatever, and if I heard her coming, I would run back to my room so fast. And it's funny because I actually pretended to be scared of the dark until I was like 10 years old, just so that I could have the hall light on so that I could sneak down and watch wrestling.
Brilliant. Holy.
She tried. You don't need the light. Yes, I do. I'm terrified.
It's so scary.
Dark for so long. Because I wanted to watch wrestling, and then also too, I would actually like use the light from the hall to read wrestling magazines or play my Game Boy or whatever in my bed.
I feel like we can relate so much. It's the troubles of being a '90s kid because
I
this
feel
was.
like I'm building up my nerd cred here today.
It's the way it's the nerd card is always filled here. Like I remember being a kid and like I wanted to play the Nintendo. So before bed, I would sneak the Nintendo into my room before nobody would notice because I had this like little TV in there. And then like 2 a.m. would roll around. I would like hide something like a pillow or a towel or something on the bottom of my door so no light could escape my room. I would turn off all the sound. I would close the blinds and stuff, and I plug in the Nintendo so I could play like Bucky O'Hare with nobody noticing. Because I'm like, what else am I gonna do at 2 a.m.?
Right? Not sleep so that you can have a good day at school or anything like that. That's ridiculous.
School was a waste of time for me because I'm like, there's video games to be played. Why would I want to go to school? Little did I know that learning is actually a really amazing thing, and I love learning. But at the time, I was like, this is taking me away from Sega channels, so I don't like this. So.
Oh yeah, man. Even when I got older too, like when I was in high school, they used to put on Ring of Honor on Fight Network. It would have been like 2006, 2007, and they would put Ring of Honor on the Fight Network at like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I would skip school quite often because I'd get too, or at least skip my first period because I'd get too into what was going on with Ring of Honor. So like it wasn't even just when I was little. Even when I was a teenager, like
Bad habits through your entire life because of wrestling.
yeah.
At least you've moved past not being scared of the dark anymore. At least there's some growth.
Well,
I mean, it depends. Depends what the locker room looks like that night, I suppose. I mean, I've hear horror stories of some places that people get put to get in their change and stuff. Ugh, weird things.
oh yeah, there's been a broom closet or two where
Just like
or
next to a chemical bath, you're like, all right.
I outdoors inside of a trailer. That's been done a few times.
Well, why not, right? Like just hiding in your car probably sometimes is just the best option. Just be like, I'm just gonna hide in here and change. But anyways,
My favorite was like back when I used to do a lot of like the festivals down in like Wisconsin and Minnesota in the summertime. And like sometimes your locker room would legit be like a mile away. You have to have like checkpoints of like rookies like every 500 feet. Like, okay, send the next guy. His music's playing.
jeez,
I
everybody's
gotta
just
walk
rushing to
like
go
a
up.
mile, like in my skivvies through all these people who are like, "What is going on?" Because wrestling's just one of the things there, so they just see some dude in his skivvies walking through the festival. It's like, cool.
There's,
My
some
life.
babies watching. They're like, I don't know what's going on, but we got to follow that guy.
That's the hope, right? Like, I hope I'm not scaring them away. Like, where's
I'm
that
sure
guy
at the
go?
festival they're
Go the
looking
other
around.
way.
They're like, what else? This is a festival. This is a Renaissance fair. Who cares? People are. But anyways, thank you so much for today. We've gone for quite a while, but this has been such a great, fun little chat here, man. I seriously appreciate this. As I've said before, I've been waiting for this one for a long time to learn some of your stories. So I'm glad we were able to it just kept going. It felt like I was like, man, I could just keep asking questions forever.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me, and I had a lot of fun too. We'll have to do it again sometime. I hope it lived up to the expectations.
Absolutely. I had a great time. Now I know that my next challenge here has to be some sort of GoldenEye tournament against you, which is what a great thing to walk out of tonight with. Because if you had told me that this morning, I'd be like, he plays GoldenEye too? Man, what a great guy.
Maybe we can do that on Twitch.
There you go. We could do that
There
here
you
on
go.
Twitch. We don't live too far apart, and I literally have an entire man cave with a retro video game set up. We can make it happen.
All right,
Just
I
putting
think
that
we've got a plan now. We'll just have to give it some time, and we'll make it happen.
We'll make it happen.
Whole tournament going.
All right, buddy. Well, do you want to give your plugs and say where people can find you and everything before I let you go here today?
Sure thing. Social media is really easy. It's the Travis Cole. I kind of hate it because it sounds arrogant, but it was the only thing that was available on all the platforms. So there's different things. But anyway, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you can find me, the Travis Cole. And then obviously I will be wrestling in Southern Alberta this week. I will be in mid-Alberta next week. And I've got a lot of stuff coming up in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and hopefully by the time the summer run comes around, I'll be able to travel a little bit more. But as I mentioned before, I've been playing around with Photoshop and stuff like that. So I usually post a little graphic with all my dates for a month. So if anyone is interested in coming and seeing me wrestle, they can do so just by following me at the Travis Cole.
Perfect. All right, buddy. Thank you so much. I will send you a message here after we're all wrapped up and everything. But seriously, once again, thank you again for joining me here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
No problem. All right. You have yourself a wonderful night, buddy. A really big thank you once again to Travis Cole for joining me here today, and of course to all of you for tuning in and listening. It was really fun to talk with Travis finally about his life in wrestling, what he's done, and like all the different stories along the way and what he would love to do. So that was really great, and I'm glad I got to finally be able to do this after many, many years of loving the Alberta independent scene and wanting to chat with him. I'm so glad we finally got to do it, and I was glad I was able to share that with you here today. Now remember, there is no live Wrestlesode tonight because I do have to work, but there will be an additional episode being released this Wednesday with one T.Y. Jackson, so don't forget to tune into that as well. Don't forget to check out our sponsors here today. Remember also to give us a like and a follow and leave a comment or subscribe if you've enjoyed your content, or if you've enjoyed the content here today. It really does help continue to boost this channel. We've done really, really well here, and I would love to see what everybody thinks about Wrestlesode and who they would love to see me chat with next. So, yeah, anyways, that does it for me here today. I hope you all have yourself a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.